Hello and welcome to the first of what will be quite a number of reflections on the Psalms. And I want to start by reading Psalm 1, and I'm going to read from the New Revised Standard Version. And this is what it says. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers, but their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all that they do, they prosper. The wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. I tell you what's interesting about that psalm when you look at it, is that there's a contrasting kind of depiction of lifestyles or destinations. When you first start reading it, you come across words like follow and path and sit, and it's primarily speaking in terms of someone who doesn't know God. We read together, who do not follow the advice of the wicked, take the paths of sinners, sit in the seat of scoffers. It's defining people who have just lost their way, people who are living a life outside of the law of God. But then, of course, as you read through the psalm, you come across words like meditate and planted and way, which speaks of a definition of those who know God, who meditate in his word, who are planted, it tells us, by streams of water, and who, if you like, are living and prosper in their way. And as you look at them, what hits you is this. On the one side, when it speaks of those who follow the advice of the wicked and take the paths of sinners, it's a slow declining of life. Some call it atrophy, where you kind of see a incremental decay of a life. And that's what this does. If you look at the words follow and path and sit, the word itself, follow, detects the people we watch, listen to, take advice from, the environments we live in. When we think of the word path, and it talks in here about the path the sinners tread, it's talking about behavior and lifestyle. So you see the connections already being made. What I listen to, what I absorb myself in, then becomes the very thing I act like, the things I begin to take on board, the things I begin to listen to. And then you finish where this word sit in the seat of scoffers. And of course, a seated position is kind of a place of establishment. It's an end destination, if you like. What does that mean in terms of our walk? For those who stray from God, they connect to people, voices, environments that aren't healthy. It affects their lifestyle and behavior, and then it cements, it sits, it establishes itself in their pattern of habits and routines until suddenly they're locked in it. So what the psalmist is trying to do is he's saying, happy are those whose life hasn't followed that trajectory, whose life hasn't been dogged, if you like, and contorted and diluted. The contrast he brings to that is found in verses 2 and 3. But their delight. Now there's a key question, isn't it? Because oftentimes people say, well, you know, my life has gone in a certain direction, but it's not what I'd have wanted. But of course that always raises a really controversial question, because of course, surely we only ever do in the long term what we really want to do. Wherever we go in our lives, it is a reflection of where our heart lies, where our desires lie. So what the psalmist says is, happy are those who are not following the advice of the wicked, or taking the path that sinners tread, or sitting in the seat of scoffers, because their delight is somewhere else. What they really want to do is somewhere else. It reminds me of Martin Luther, the great reformer of the 1500s, when he first started to have his eyes opened and his heart opened to the truth of faith and justification by faith and all that came to typify him as a preacher. And one particular time in his class, he was sat with his students, and he said to each of his students, he said, each of you today can do anything you want to do. And one student, sharp as a button, put his hand up and said, oh, then can I go outside now and go and sleep with a prostitute? Equally as sharp, Luther fired back, yes, of course you can. Garnered by that, another student jumped up and said, oh, can I go and get drunk in one of the sort of public houses? And Luther again sort of, yes, you can do whatever you want, do that. And of course, one or two then rattled off probably the worst thing they could think of, and each time Luther responded exactly the same, yes, you can do whatever you want. The key is this: when it all came silent and each of them was sharing a smirk or two, not beside a bit of confusion as well, Luther said, you can do whatever you want to do, but what do you want to do? And the penny dropped with some of them. What God did was not exactly change their behavior, but he changed what they wanted to do. When you change someone's innermost motives and innermost desires, the behavior follows according to that change. And so Luther's point was this: grace changes you from the deepest part of you inside, and as a result, everything else you do is affected by that. So rather than God saying, look, here's a set of 25 rules, now that you're a Christian, if you can keep to these rules, we'll just get on dandy, and if you don't, well, there's going to be problems. Not at all. What God does is he works right in the deepest part of you, your motives, your desires, those things that drive you, those things that captivate you. And by doing that, everything else around you, the periphery stuff, gets transformed in the process. This is what the psalmist is driving at. So rather than someone who's decaying in atrophy and deteriorating because he's following the advice and environment of the wicked, he's taking the path that sinners tread, he's sitting with the scornful, he's establishing in negative habits, he says those who follow, are meditating day and night. They are planted by streams of water. In other words, they have a constant source of refreshment and resource. Their leaves do not wither, and in all that they do, they prosper. That's the contrasting picture that he's building right there, which is an incredible picture. The implications, of course, is that all the things that we listen to and all the things that we absorb, we do so based on what we truly, deeply desire. And when God and grace works in your heart, it does not work in a sense of saying, here's more rules to follow, try your best to do as much as you can of these and tick the boxes. What grace does is say, here's what's really important, the you, that real, soulful, inner you. And of course, this is exactly how the Hebrews understood the word, because heart in the Hebrew language was not your fantasies, your romances, your bumping physical heart, if you like. To the Hebrew, the heart represented the core part of you. All that you desired, all that you felt, all that you feared, all that you kind of were enthusiastic about, all that you dreamed about and purposed, that was captured in that little word heart. And for this reason, when the heart delights in God, everything else changes around it. And that's what the Bible again and again confirms. So my encouragement to you as we finish our short kind of meditation on this first psalm is have a look at what you listen to, what you absorb. What trajectory is your life following? Don't be like those who follow, if you like, the advice of the wicked, and consequently they take the path that sinners tread and sit in the seat of scoffers. I mean, these are old-fashioned words, but don't be a busted thing. Instead, turn your delight to God and fuel that delight by meditating in his word. Appreciate that you have hidden resource like a tree planted by water drawing from a nearby source, and that you are prospering in everything you do. In other words, you are doing the most important thing. Prospering in this scripture doesn't mean you're wealthy and healthy and flying, 20,000 feet in the air and you're above all the problems. It doesn't mean that. What it means is that the most important things in life are becoming the very things that are characterizing you as a person. So can I encourage you, go back and read Psalm 1. Read it slowly. Have a think about the things we've said. And I've no doubt as you do that, God will even deeper richly bless you. Take care until next time.